A warm welcome back to the Forensic Unplugged channel, guys. Well, I guess that's why they call it the blues. So I got the post-track day blues at the moment. Had a great time over in Spa, and I'm now back in miserable old Blighty. Got a few videos to shoot today, and I wanted to shoot a quick video on talking about Porsche performance. So this car now runs about 293 brake horsepower, which isn't too bad actually, it's really good. And I think when I go back to my Sports Cat system, I'll be close to like 296 horsepower, maybe even a little bit more. Don't know, we'll rolling mode it. We've also weight reduced this car down. I've got a carbon fibre roof. I've even got a carbon fibre bonnet there, which is pretty rare and very cool. I've got like sports seats. I've got the rear stripped out. I've stripped out loads of things. Steering wheel's lighter. I've taken the rear wiper off. Dan says take the carpets out. It's a step too far for me. I reckon it's running about 1,300 kilos with 293 brake horsepower. And what we want to do is try and think about how we can juice more performance out of this stock M96 engine, this 3.4 litre engine that comes in these Porsche 996. This is an early cable throttle one. So the 3.4 has cable throttle actuated ones. So you pull on the cable, it opens the throttle body flap. And it has fly-by-wire ones where, you know, it's a motor that opens and closes the flap. Okay, now we learned, I think, that the stock air intake system, you know, this air box taking a cold air feed through the top, going through here, and then I've done a resonator, airbox resonator delete, which is a noise thing. Don't get confused with the resonator flap, which opens and closes in the back of the air intake system, which is important. This, we took off the K&N airbox and put this back in and gained about 6 or 7 brake horsepower right at the top end of the rev range. I do have a PSR line wet filter in here, you know, like the filters that you oil, and will probably just go back to a stock paper filter, because any oiled filter puts oil into your system over time, clogs up your MAF, and gets on your intake system, can dirty your throttle body and put oil into that intake pipe that mounts onto, the T-piece one, you know, a Y-piece one. I don't like all of that, so I think a stock air filter is probably the way to go. Anyway, we think that the bottleneck in this system is essentially this throttle body here. So you have your air intake system, which has got loads of air capability. You have a big beefy pipe here. Then it goes into this throttle body here, which is a cable actuated throttle body. You can see it there. So if I pull on the cable, you know, it's going to actuate it. And then it goes to the Y connector, which is like a drain pipe with a hole there and then a hole on 2 ends. Then it goes to your these intake pipes, these inlet manifold, plastic inlet manifold, which go down into brackets which mount onto the blocks, and the injectors connect into the brackets. So you chuck air and fuel into your cylinders effectively. This is really important. There's also a secondary pipe on the back with the resonator flap in it. And I think from what I've seen, you should keep that resonator system working. From what I've seen, you lose mid-range torque if you just disconnect all that and just put a pipe in with no resonator flap. You'll lose mid-range torque because it's designed to close the flap between 2,000 and 5,000, which is kind of mid-range, isn't it? Sort of 4 to 5 is a good mid-range area. You'll lose a little bit of grunt. If you're just purely racing and tracking and you're keeping up in the high revs with the car, then that would be less of an issue. Still viable to delete it if it's a race car or track car, but I wouldn't, because you still do need to use that mid-range torque, and you lose a little bit. What have I done with the throttle body? Where's the throttle body gone? Oh, it's over here. So, how can you improve performance? Well, you know, air and fuel are the things that the car burns. So the air and fuel goes in, it ignites it and it chucks it out. So a lot of times with this naturally aspirated engines, I think all you can do is look at air and fuel flow and output flow on the exhaust. So we're going to have, the exhaust is going to be covered with the sports dance system once we put that back in. What modifications can you do to the air intake system, and why am I interested in this throttle body? Well, if you look at the intake system, like we said, you know, so effectively inlet air pipe comes in down here, goes to stock air box with res delete, air filter, let's just draw it accurately, that goes into the bottom, doesn't it? And the air filter's like there, I think, something like that. So the air's got to come up through the filter, something like that, if you open it all up inside. And then the pipe comes off of here, the rubber pipe. You've got your MAF there, somewhere before there, your MAF. Rubber pipe, and then this thing here, so there's our throttle body. Okay, with the flap inside it, so we just draw the flap. Cable actuated, cable. Then the throttle body mounts onto this tube here, like that. It's effectively like that. It's got two rubber seals over it, and the rubber seals connect it to the intake spiders, and obviously a big hole here. This is important, isn't it? Because the moment the air comes through here and it goes off one way and goes off the other, and it's effectively been sucked that way by the engine. These pipes are big, so straight away these are no longer bottlenecks. Then when you come off here, you've got your intake manifold has three kind of legs here, like this, plastic intake things. Your resonator pipe at the back here, res pipe, connects the two halves together, and it effectively, by opening and closing, changes the length of your intake manifold, which changes the resonance of the air. It's about resonance, that res flap, rather than airflow. Dan keeps getting it wrong. He keeps saying you get more airflow, you get resonance airflow at certain revs when that opens and activates. So it alters where the resonance occurs, if you like, or maybe that's not the best way to put it. Anyway, so these aren't bottlenecks as such. They're not bottlenecks for airflow, but obviously these are a lot smaller, these pipes, because they're feeding individual cylinders. And then here we have these brackets, these metal brackets that bolt onto the engine block, and the injectors plug in on those things there. And then here you have the engine block. Okay, so we think from measuring everything and Googling like ninjas, we think that this throttle body is the bottleneck, is a bottleneck, let's be careful. And this throttle body here is 74 mil diameter there in this intake, 74 mil cable throttle body. There is only one possible upgrade, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but you can go and buy a GT3 cable throttle. Must be cable throttle for my car. There's a GT3 fly-by-wire as well. GT3 cable throttle body. And it comes, we think, with 76 mil diameter, so slightly larger airflow. And we think, don't quote me on all this, I could be wrong, but we think they get bored out, and you can bore them out to 80 mil, the cable, the cup ones, or GT3, GT3 ones, GT3 cable throttle things. So 76 to 80 mil roughly. Now this hole here we measured at, let's say 77, it was actually 76.9. So that hole there is slightly bigger than that, which makes sense that that would be upgraded. when you upgrade to a GT3 throttle body, it incorporates this pipe, so you can remove that pipe. The GT3 throttle body has, I believe, it's metal all the way through and connects straight into this inlet manifold. You put the rubber, it'll slot into the rubber mounts that go over it. So if you if you put a GT3 throttle body on there, you'd probably have a little bit more bore. Boring it out to 80 mil would be an option, because you're removing this plastic pipe with the 77 mil throw on it, the 77 mil hole on it. The problem with this is it's expensive and it's hard to get. It's going to be expensive. You're probably, I don't know what you're talking about for one of those, if you ever even find one. The next problem is that I think possibly even at 80 mil, if you bored out the GT3 one, you might be putting more air in than each of these can handle. I doubt that. Or each of these will draw, rather than handle. It's draw, isn't it? So I know one guy, James, the chap who was helping me with he's got a CSR build, and these holes here in this thing, which look a little bit like they've got the scoop in it for the injector. I think he had these ported out, so these were increased in size, so you could drill those out to make those bigger. And I think he had his engine block ported as well, so they made the holes bigger that these mount up to on the engine block. So you've got more airflow in here. James has got a 3.4 engine as well, but I think he has a fly-by-wire throttle body, I think. But that wouldn't essentially matter. But what he was able to do is increase horsepower up to around 323. That's not on Surrey rolling road, so it could be a little bit lower. It could be a bit optimistic, or it might be bang on, I don't know. But it's good, whatever it is. It's good. Let's even assume it was 315. 315 would still be fantastic. So by making modifications to the air intake system, you can improve performance. The problem is with all of this is, so you can go around and make these modifications and keep rolling roading and seeing if you're getting gains. But I think when you start messing around with all this stuff and you've done a fair amount of work, you probably need a custom map on the car to see the real true benefits. But what I'm thinking is I've stole this off Dan. Said, can I borrow this, Dan? You don't mind if I destroy it as well, do you? He's like, okay. What I'm thinking is these stock throttle bodies, they can be bored out, or there's a German company that bore them out to 76.4 mil there. So in other words, they machine the inside of this out, and you haven't got a lot of meat there to play with, but you'd be talking about, if you're increasing by 2.4 mil, you're talking 1.2 mil off of the inside of that, and that looks about 3 or 4 mil to me. And there's doesn't need a lot of strength. It's just a pipe, so you're looking 1.2 mil off of each thing. So you bore this out or lathe it out all the way through. The problem you've got then, obviously, is your throttle body flap, which looks like it's an aluminium flap. Sometimes I think they can be brass, sometimes aluminium. I think that's aluminium. It's going to be too small after you've bored this out, and so you're going to need to take that flap off, which looks like it's got 2 torque screws. To be very careful when you're taking these screws out, because if those screws ever come loose, they're going to be going into your engine. So have they done anything clever? Is that plastic, that pipe? Oh, it feels plastic. Is it metal covered in plastic? Who knows? That feels like, what is that material? Is that? Anyway, take these out, bore this all out, increase the flap, get another flap made, same thickness, aluminium. I'm assuming it's just a flat disc. Bolt that on, thread lock it maybe, because you don't, like I say, you do not want that coming out. Now there's some other little problems here. One is that's your idle control valve here. So when you're at idle and the throttle body's closed, it opens that valve, so you've got airflow coming through to the engine. If you had a gap round here, you come off the gas, you'd still be revving it, it'd still rev higher because you've got airflow coming through here. So you need to be careful, but that won't interfere there because you'll just bore that a little bit deeper, but you need to watch your widths there and be careful. But you can also, we also think it's wider this end slightly. I think you can probably see that on camera. We think it widens out. So the main bottleneck that we would want to look at, I'll recheck all that, is in here. And you can see that's the throttle body, that's the idle control valve intake from this side of the throttle body. So it goes in, through there and out. So that would be okay to shave back. The next thing that we're worried about is there's a lip in here. There's a lip. Yeah. What does that lip actually do, which is really interesting? Because there's not much of a lip, but there's definitely a little lip there. Actually, if I look into that, it looks like, yeah, just a slight lip. Almost like a channel. There's like a channel in there. This is the bit where that could get really complicated. Because in there, it gets a little bit narrower on that lip. What does that do? Why is that lip there? Because it's not sealing on this pipe. It feels like it might be sealing. It's not. It's stopping on the nut. So it gets to the point where it's virtually sealed, but it's not sealed. And that lip doesn't appear to really be doing much to me. So do they just machine that off? That's the bit that can go wrong. So yeah, it's weird. There's more of a lip on the top part than the bottom. But anyway, this is a spare, so we're going to go for this. I'm going to look at getting this done. So I'm going to try and disassemble this, take that flap out, see if I can disassemble all of this, get the axle out of it, have that machined. Now you could attempt to do it yourself. I think you could just like very patiently with a, you know, like a stone on a drill, just file on that and just keep going. But I don't think you'll get an even wear. You know, you won't get an even wear. You probably want to polish it once it's all been cut as well, get it all nice and smooth in there. But anyway, the aim is to get that to 76.4 or maybe 0.5 or whatever. 0.4 seems like a good amount. Well, is it worth it? Is it worth it? What are you going to get? You're going to get like you're probably going to get 3 or 4% more airflow through there, aren't you? If it goes up to, yeah, 2.44 mil on 76 would be close to about 3%. I think that's worth doing, and I'm just interested to experiment on it. But yeah, I think it's too much work to go down the road of porting the block and even messing around with this. If you go down that road, I think, of messing around with this and this, then just drilling out this isn't worth it. You'd want 80 mil, spend the money. It all starts becoming very expensive the moment you start messing around with this, and trying to get hold of an 80 mil GT3 throttle body and going mad. There's a company called IBD that do different plenums for this as well, but I don't know how much of a difference they make, and they're about 700 or 800 quid for just that, a metal plenum that replaces the plastic one. You know, it's shaped differently and it's supposed to have better airflow. There is one specifically for this throttle body as well. It could be an option to look at that, but I'm not sure if that's a bottleneck there. I don't think on paper it is. It may be less about bottlenecks and better flow and stuff. I don't know, but I think that's going to be minimal. I think in my head it's going to be minimal to spend 700 quid on an intake plenum when your bottleneck is probably, it's known to be here. So that's where I'm at. I'm sort of a bit more stuck because my engine's in my car and it's done. Dan's engine's out of his car, sitting on a bench. So he's got, the world is his oyster in terms of what Dan could do. Yeah, that is sort of like the cheap ways of possibly improving power. You can't really get any gains by messing around with this part, I don't think, because it's just not a bottleneck. So I think you're better off. I think you're better off with cold air feed into a stock box, from what I gather, and that's not going to bottleneck you either way, or not bottleneck you much. The other options that you could talk about are different intake systems, like the GT3 intake Spider with a res delete on it, possibly, and a whole bigger intake system. But then I think if you're doing that, you'd want to go down the road of exploring and researching, porting the brackets there and the block, really opening it up a lot more so you've got a lot more airflow. Yeah, and that would be really interesting. What we've seen actually with these cars is there's a chap in our group, Nigel, who's got a it's an M96 engine that's had a 3.7 conversion done on it. And he produces 356 brake horsepower and races the car. He has a GT3 throttle body in there, and I think a stock intake manifolds. He runs BMW injectors in his, and he runs an Evolve or Evolution, I think it's called Evolution, American company, air intake system, a dry intake system without the oiling. But yeah, that's a tremendous amount of horsepower. But obviously, some of that horsepower comes from the extra capacity and all the upgrades he's done to get there. I think we want to try and get upgrades from a 3.4. We want to get, not upgrades, we want to get improvements. Is there much to be had? No, I don't think there is. I think there's not a lot. You're not fighting for a lot here, but it's good fun. The other thing, of course, is the cams. I think the X51 version of the 3.4 engine, which is a more performance orientated version. I don't know if that's Cable Throttle, but that has different cams in it. So you can change your cams and then increase airflow through the engine as well. But that becomes expensive and potentially problematic with the 3.4, and expensive and difficult potentially. Yeah. So that would probably be out of the question as well. So this is really just looking at what is the simplest, best bang for your buck, or best bang for your back, whatever, to get more airflow. And I figure I could have this machined out and I could try it. And as long as this thing seals when it closes, it looks like I've got a bit of adjustment capability there if I need to make sure it's definitely a good seal. I think I can get this sort of bored out more without having any worries about anything. And I think it would just be a good simple test. So let us know if you've gone down this route. It's complicated because there's so many variations of the engine. The fact you got the cup throttle bodies, and the fact they sort of went from cable throttle to fly-by-wire around this time. That changed kind of everything really, and it means there's more to think about with all of this. But yeah, that's what the aim of the game is. What could you get out of this stock 3.4 engine? Well, I don't think I've seen one produce more than a 3.4 producing more than 323, James's CSR build. So that's probably, they didn't do his cams though, because it was problematic. So yeah, I think that would be the best that I think you could probably get for the time being, unless you go, balls out with the engine side of it and the cams. Yeah, but the problem you've also got, really, this is looking at airflow, which is interesting. You, with these cars, I think you need to be more worried, or your priority, I think is perhaps the correct word. Your priority should be more about protecting against oil starvation, because these flat, these flat six engines, engine block goes, it's really wide. You know, we've seen it out the car. You get, you get oil starvation with them, basically. If you're not careful and you're going around certain circuits with long sweeping left-handers and you're on it, you're really pushing that oil across. That's what happened to me. I was on it. I was chasing someone, forgetting about the car. I just got confidence in the car that it can handle it, and I was on it. Third gear. So you can't, you've got to be careful with these cars. So I think in terms of reliability, before you do any of this, worry about performance, I would say deeper sump, and I've got an X51 sump with a sump spacer on it, so I run 11 litres of oil. But you might also want to look at the AccuSump, pressurised, oil, like cylinder that's pushing the oil in all the time under pressure. When your oil pressure drops, because you're going around a corner, it'll pump more oil in, so it'll always try and protect your main bearings in the crank that need that oil flow coming through the crank and out the holes and lubricating the main bearing and all the rod bearings. You do not want that to be paused or interrupted when you're under load, or any time really. So that's important. So deeper sump, baffled sump, AccuSump or pressurized sump. So we're going to be looking at a solution with Steve from SW Racing or Motorsport. Okay, I always get it the wrong way around. I think it's racing. And eventually we'll put in those, because this is going to get tracked maybe next year, maybe 10 times a year or something like that. And when you're on it with these cars, you can blow them. Trust me. And not just me. I've just seen it happen too many times. Not just these cars, funnily enough, just Porsches in general. So you've got to protect yourself against oil starvation. Even with the top of the range cars, with all of them, I think can have problems. Well, I don't know. I know a little bit about this car, but I don't know a lot about the other ones. So yeah, there's where we are. That's an interesting little kind of hobby thing. And that's why I think I like these cars. This was back in the age where they weren't too obsessive about power back in this generation of kind of car making, I don't think, because they could have put more power into these. They'd have realised that quite quickly, and they did. But they just weren't kind of obsessed with it, I think. And I think 300 brake horse in them is a good amount of power. And probably another subject for another video, but I was at Spa the other day, and like your bulk standard car that you see at a track day now, you could, well, it's not bulk standard, but like your average car is something like an M2 comp or something like that. An is it F87? What's the one back from the previous generation? Great cars, but there's loads of them, and they are rocket ships with like 450 brake horse out the box, and you can map them up to like 500 brake horse, and people run them with slick tyres, and they are like proper hardcore. And same with M3s, and same with new Porsches as well, like the 718 GT4s and all that. You want that. At some point, you go out there and you sort of get fast cars, and you want a really fast car, and you get one, and it's like, wow. But after a few years of that, you realise, or I think a lot of people realise, that the fun isn't in the acceleration. The fun is in the overall package, I think. And it's nice to have a car that you can just kind of work on yourself and do things and plot things and improve it. And I think the thing with the 996s, I was saying this to Dan the other day, there's such a cool like aftermarket scene with it, and you like, because they're old, there's all things coming up for sale, and these get broken all the time, you know, stripped and all that. Every now and then a set of like GT3 rep seats will come up, or real GT3 seats, or a really cool cage you've been looking at, or a part that you're looking for, a throttle body for a GT3 will come up. And like you can shop around and buy all these parts and upgrade your cars from. You don't get that when you go and buy a modern car, because they're all done. You don't touch them. You devalue them if you touch them. Certain Porsches, you just don't. You want them to be original and stock, and you don't want to play around with them. You miss out on all the fun if you have it like that, and you miss out on all the shopping and hit list of parts and upgrades and pulling things apart and breaking things and chopping roofs off and all that. That's where all the fun is for me. So these 996s are very fun, and the fact that you can get them for like not a lot of money just adds to the thing. Because if you go and spend 80,000, like I love the 718 GT4s, like manual, the carbon fibre seats. I think they're amazing, and like part of me thinks I'd love to have one of those in here, but it would be so mint and so valuable for me. I wouldn't want to spank it around a racetrack in it. I wouldn't want to touch it. I'd get in and out of it carefully, because the carbon fibre seats are so mint and amazing. It does my head in that I'm getting in and out of it and scuffing them up and wearing out the car. Whereas this car, I don't give a monkeys. So I've come to the conclusion, you know, you don't want to get too precious about cars, because you end up spending your life trying to maintain something which is ultimately, you know, it's not going to be around forever, for an eternity, neither are we. And your mind is in a much better place if it's just not worrying about things like that. And instead it's like really looking forward to doing stuff on the car. So yeah, I'll do another video on that, because I think it's a really important life lesson. So yeah, that's my plans, guys. I thought it was an interesting subject that some of you will be interested in. Others of you won't give a damn about any of that, but I do. Oh yeah, you got breather pipes on this as well, which you got to be careful about. I think, what the hell is that one? What the hell is that one? Is that? I think that pipe curls off around there. I think that's a brake booster. I still don't know what that does. It sounds good though. Brake booster breather pipe. What the hell does that do? Will it boost the brake? Okay. I've got some other bits and pieces to do today, including, let's make sure this is all shut down, including addressing this potentially. So don't forget to subscribe, stay tuned, and I'll see you soon. Look at it out there. Horrible. Doug.